fangs glowed a yellowish white, tinted with blood. A pair of energy-packed eyes glowered down at something caked with mud. Her tail rose proudly in the dazzling sun. With her ears perked in tension, a beautiful, tough-looking dog stood over her falling opponent. The wind slowly picked up, sending long, stray hairs aside from the other dog's face. Her eyes were round with respect yet fear. Taking a threatening step forward, the bulldog growled down at the lost challenger. Whining with admiration, the falling dog quickly turned over on her back, softly wagging her tail in mercy. Without another word, rejecting the plead, the dog, still standing in trumpet, lunged forward, grasping the other dog's neck. With a shriek, the weaker dog felt her head jiggle violently and her tail tuck between her legs. Already weakened by the first battle, she felt herself go limp. The winning dog snarled in protest. Ripping away from her falling rival, the alpha stood, with both eyes on the young dog. She watched as she heaved herself up, mud falling on the ground. Barking with a warning message, Alpha turned away sharply from the carelessly thinking dog. Her mouth watered with saliva at the smell of dead deer. Alpha quickly hurried back to the meal. The rest of the pack had been watching. They greeted Alpha with their ears low, looking Alpha's face. Ignoring the affection of the dogs, Alpha greedily swallowed large chunks of meat. She kept an eye on the dog that she had just fought. It was Alpha's sister. It was Sister's turn to miss out on the meal this day, but she had disobeyed Alpha and had stolen a piece. Alpha watched her pack mates eat along with her. The loyal dogs had many colors, but all were large and strong. Alpha had beaten and forbidden small and pathetic dogs from her pack. Alpha bit off another piece of the red bloody meat. She chewed and swallowed, meeting eyes of one of her most trusted dogs. His eyes met hers with an even glance. After a second, he quickly looked away and gobbled hungrily at the deer. His fur was yellowish at the back, paws and tails, but his belly and neck were coated with fluffy white fur. His green eyes shone delight, and his black-tipped ears flopped down and only perked when he was hunting or listening to Alpha giving an order. Blacktips was his name. He was strong and fearless, yet Alpha loved the way he crunched down in respect in front of her. Alpha sniffed the meat and yanked another piece off. She looked across the deer and gazed at a huge black dog, his face splashed with brown. He was tall and habitually stared at Alpha, challenging her to a staring battle. Alpha always won, and stare would be punished. Alpha glanced at the rest of the dogs. Some had gray pelts, but most had plain ground fur. All were strong and brave under the orders of Alpha. Alpha herself was rather small for a leader, but she was strong and was able to pin down any dog who challenged her. Her long tail was black, along with the rest of her body, but her face and paws were golden brown. Alpha watched the fly buzz around the meat. Snapping her teeth to scare off the insect, Alpha noticed the wet grass under her paws. Mud squeezed between her toes slowly. The sound of moose or caribou clanking their antlers together broke into Alpha's ears. Her pack paused and looked up in awe. Some began to bark, while others ignored it, returning back to their meals. Alpha let her pack eat. She quickly hopped up and ran a few feet towards the sound. Her own pack would be battling soon. With the new spring here, all the males were fighting for a mate. Alpha would watch as two males would battle and rage. Whichever one won, whichever one stood as the toughest would be her mate. She had at least 7 or 8 young males in the pack. The older ones with mates already would stay off, or, if they pleased, fight for a new mate. She'd have a wide choice for her mate. The other females would get a choice too, but Alpha would be sure to choose hers first, so she knew she'd get the strongest, so her pups would be as gorgeous and as threatening as herself and her mate. Pricking her ears as she listened to the snorting and clanking of the antlers, Alpha heard a soft whine behind her. She spun around to face Sister. Sister's tail was low and wagged shyly, growling with annoyance. The high and worthy dog narrowed her eyes at the small, useless dog. Alpha gave a move with her body, sending a quick message. "What do you want, Sister?" Sister whimpered and tilted her head towards the dead deer. All the flesh was gone, and the pack was lazily gnawing at the bones. Sister pressed her stomach to the ground and crawled over to Alpha. Alpha raised her lips to show off her teeth. Avoiding looking in Alpha's eyes, Sister flipped on her back and raised her paw and placed it on Alpha's chest. Her paws were the same color as Alpha. In fact, they looked just alike, only Sister was much smaller and weak. Sister winced and whined loudly, begging Alpha to let her have the leftovers of the meal. Alpha ignored her and roughly pushed her away. Sister yelped and began to bark in protest. Alpha raised her tail and began to walk around Sister. Sister stopped her complaining and began begging again. Alpha sighed and listened to the mournful voice of Sister. She turned back to the deer. There was nothing but bones and uneatable parts, like a few organs lying around. Alpha turned sharply to Sister, deciding to accept her plead. "You may finish off any scraps of the flesh, but do it quickly. You may also have a bone, but not the big one." By big one, Alpha meant her leg bones. She always saved those for herself. Sister slowly crawled to the bones. She licked the dry, tasteless meal miserably. Alpha didn't care she was ungrateful, but her hackles rose in anger. She shouldn't have let Sister eat, on the day she wasn't to. Shaking her head, Alpha blinked. Sister was her sister. She loved Sister, but as Alpha, she wasn't a friend, but a leader.